everybody. I'm Caryn Hartglass. You are listening to It's All About Food. If you're new to the program, I want to tell you a little bit about It's All About Food. The program has been broadcast on the Progressive Radio Network since 2009. And on this program, obviously, we talk about food. And food covers a wide range of topics. Healthy food, toxic food, growing animals as food, and how it affects our health, the health of the planet, and animals. And there are many, many more topics that are involved with food. And sometimes I even like to talk about food for the mind, what feeds our thoughts, because that also affects our health and it feeds our emotional well-being as well as our physical well-being. And it's a very, very important topic that's getting a lot more attention these days. The burning question I always have is, why isn't everybody vegan? And it's something that I don't have the answer to, but we keep digging to find it. And why is it that I want to make vegans? Why is it important to me? I started on this journey a long time ago when I was a teenager, when I realized we were killing animals to feed people. And it was causing a lot of pain and suffering to the animals who were raised very often in very unpleasant, filthy conditions and then were slaughtered. And if we're honest with ourselves, we know that each individual animal that is sentient and can feel pain and loves the sun on their back and loves being with their family and their friends doesn't want to die, doesn't want to be slaughtered. And I had that awakening, I had that epiphany when I was a teenager, and it developed over time as I learned more. And I don't understand why other people don't feel the same way. So I'm continually searching to find ways to share the information that I have and the importance of it, because not only is it cruel to the individual animals, but we're discovering, and we've been discovering this for decades, maybe even hundreds of years, that this way of life does not nourish our planet. And we are slowly destroying the beautiful balance on planet Earth, and it's detrimental to human survival as well as other species' survival. And it's also not good for our health, our personal health. So if we're looking to feel good for as long as possible, I don't understand why people don't want to feed their bodies to enable that. So here we are. That's the motivation behind this program. We're constantly discovering, we're constantly learning. I interview many, many authors on many subjects related to food, health, environment, treatment of animals. There are wonderful cookbook authors that have developed so many recipes for delicious ways to eat vegan. And here we are. And now I want to bring on Mattei, who does such a good job of helping me discover the truth and asks difficult questions, even to me, so that I can come up with some sensible responses. Thank you for that, Gary.
Caryn, it's great to be back. So we have done a show now the last 3 weeks in a row. You have not had any cookbook authors on. You've had me on.
I love our conversation.
No, and I know you're reading lots of books and are going to have a great lineup of new authors and new books that support the beautiful words that you just said about your mission to bring information to people about why you think this lifestyle is not only the best lifestyle for your health, but also the best lifestyle for the planet's health. And obviously, it's a no-brainer to realize that it's the best lifestyle for the animals out there. The impact that animal agriculture has on the environment is something that's a constant topic on this program. Let's talk a little bit about that. What happens to the planet when we raise all of these animals? Let's remind people, especially folks who are new to this program, who are just dropping in to listen for the first time, what impact does animal agriculture, the growing of animals for food, have on the environment?
There are so many issues, and I hope I can remember them all. Animal agriculture impacts our air, our soil, and our water. And just simple thoughts about raising animals to feed people. Animals, no matter what size they are, they can be small, like a chicken, and they can be large, like a cow. Animals have to eat, and then animals have to excrete.
Right.
And this whole system has to happen repeatedly in order for us to raise them so we can eat them.
And so by going vegan, what we suggest is let's not raise crops to feed animals to then kill these animals and feed people. Let's just raise crops to feed people. Now that seems like a simple solution. Well, we're in the West right now, and there is a serious drought going on. I mean, it is crazy. The whole western part of the country is on fire. There's drought. There's no water. Those of us that continue to look the other way and not notice this are now being smothered by smoke from fires. So the reality is on us.
The reality is here.
Nature is saying...
And we've known this reality for decades. We knew this was coming.
So it's here. It's even more difficult now to look away because people are being evacuated. People are starting to think, well, I've got to pack a bag. I got to get out of here. And the cause of this is
animal agriculture.
Animal agriculture. Yeah. Animal agriculture has been linked to climate change, and we are experiencing climate change. And so the solution would be if everybody stopped driving a gas-powered car. Is that going to do it rapidly enough, or would it be to stop animal agriculture? And the answer is to stop animal agriculture. That's going to have a bigger impact than if we all stopped driving fossil-fueled vehicles.
It's going to have the bigger immediate impact. And this is something that we learned about from Robert Goodland. We learned that by not consuming animals, this is something we can do instantly. We can just switch from animals to plants. Whereas technology, factories and cars and all of that takes time, and we have to build these things. Just going through the pandemic, we realize what a tremendous impact that has on cars, because we haven't been making the integrated circuits, the chips that are required inside the cars. And so the manufacture of cars has been slowed down because they don't have the chips for them. This is something that is going to take time in order to change the technology, in order to create what we need for transportation and for manufacturing. But food, this is quick. We can grow plants quickly. We can grow the plants we need to feed people quickly. And this is something that can change quickly. And we don't have to be artificially inseminating these animals to reproduce and breed them and keep creating them. The ones that are here, they can live out their lives, and we can start growing food for people. It's a tremendously inefficient process to grow food, to feed animals, to feed people. But let's add on top of that. So in order to grow the food to feed the animals, which is tremendously inefficient, we have created this way to grow food that doesn't work with nature. In order to get the water we need, we've been draining aquifers for decades now with high-powered diesel pumps in order to get the water that's been created from ice ages, clean, pure water that's been stored underground. We're now sucking that out at an alarming rate and draining them. And some of them are kind of refilling that space with water that isn't as pristine in order to grow crops in places that maybe we shouldn't be growing crops, or maybe we shouldn't be growing specific crops that require this amount of water. Or maybe we should.
There's a word you talk about a lot on this program called monocropping.
Exactly.
You're talking about like planting thousands and thousands and thousands of hectares
of soy and alfalfa and food crops to feed animals.
And food that normally animals wouldn't even be eating. These animals we're talking about are cows. They don't normally eat soy. We have brought animals from their natural habitat to places where it isn't necessarily their natural habitat.
And what happens when they eat food that isn't right for them? They have gut issues, just like people have gut issues. And those gut issues will relate to creating more greenhouse gases than they normally create.
So it's just a disaster to raise animals to feed people, and yet it's something that we put millions and millions and millions of dollars behind.
And let's add another level to that. Because we're growing monocropping, which is not a sustainable way to grow food, we have to bring some nutrition and some balance to the soil, which is dying and eroding because we're not treating it well. We're not allowing the microbes and the bugs that need to be in soil do their thing, composting. And
you just talked on this program about that very subject.
Well, we were watching the film The Need to Grow, and we talked about soil erosion.
Right.
We learned quite a bit about that.
Yeah, so let's talk about pesticides and herbicides for a minute. We, on this program, have talked organic farming, biodynamic farming versus conventional farming, which uses pesticides and herbicides. That in and of itself, because we're relating all of this to food, and the reasons we're using pesticides and herbicides is because we're trying to grow crops, monocrop, and so we're wiping out all of the good soil to grow these crops to feed animals, to feed people, not realizing, or maybe realizing but not caring, how we're destroying the environment. So let's talk a little bit about pesticides and herbicides and how they not only get into the plants, but once the animal eats the plant, it gets into the animal. A human eats these animals that are tainted with pesticides and herbicides from the plant, and they get sick.
You're connecting all the dots, Gary.
So this is what we're talking about, we're talking about connecting the dots.
Herbicides and pesticides are a double-edged sword. So to begin with, to make these products, we have to dig deep into the earth and get that petroleum and create different products from it. We create fertilizers from that. We can create some pesticides and herbicides. They're all carbon-based, and we're pulling carbon from the earth and making materials with it. And what happens ultimately is carbon dioxide ends up being released into the atmosphere, and we warm the planet.
We warm the planet, and we get what's going on now, which is droughts in the west and flooding in the east and hurricanes in the south. And
people like to they like to push this aside and say, no. We have a closed loop when we grow plants and we feed animals and we eat those animals. But it's not a closed loop. We are digging tons of carbon out of the earth and putting it up into the atmosphere. It is not closed because we're not putting the carbon back into the earth. Yeah. And the other part of it is, as you mentioned, these pesticides and herbicides, they are toxic. They are meant to kill. Right. They are meant to kill. I need to say that one more time. They are meant to kill.
They were designed and created in the laboratory to kill things.
And actually, many of these products came from World War II, where chemical companies were creating things to kill people. And when the wars were over, what are we going to do with these products?
What we're going to do is millions of gallons.
That are living through chemistry. They made products to kill insects and animals and weeds that were affecting particular crops.
Right. And let's talk about that word pest. Someone invented that
weeds
word.
Weeds and pests.
Yeah, weeds and pests. But they're not really pests. They're only pests to certain humans, and they're only weeds to certain humans.
Weeds can be nutritious food for people.
Right. And pests can be very necessary, as we're finding out more and more and more.
Well, some can be beneficial insects.
Yeah.
They can be beneficial if you use them in the right way.
But we create these products that kill these weeds and kill these things that we call pests. That product gets into our food, and what does it do to us?
These toxic residues are harmful to our health. Many pesticides are linked to a number of different diseases that affect us neurologically. Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis, a lot of autoimmune diseases are linked to getting these toxic residues into our body and having them wreak havoc. Autoimmune diseases, they're just exploding, and there are so many that are under this category of autoimmune disease, and part of it is related to consuming food with these toxic residues.
And so it could even maybe affect our memory.
Absolutely.
And you've talked to, I know in this program, a lot of doctors, a lot of nutritionists, a lot of cookbook authors that link these autoimmune diseases to a conventional standard American diet. The acronym for that is SAD.
SAD.
What we're trying to do on this program is we're trying to let people know that they don't have to eat this way, and they can still eat deliciously and nutritiously, and they won't miss their meat at all. But the problem is that they meaning some folks who don't want to connect the dots, turn the other way and continue to eat the way they do, and they get sick and they go into the hospitals for these procedures, or they get these autoimmune diseases, or they get this thing we now call Alzheimer's or dementia. They have strokes. Even the hospitals are feeding people foods that are continuing to keep them sick. Why? because they make money on these procedures, as we're finding out. They make money on bypasses.
They make money, but I also think people feel like they're doing the right thing because they don't know any better.
So they're not connecting the dots.
They're not connecting the dots. And education, unfortunately, is not up to the most current information. Dietitians are not learning the most current information. Medical students are not learning the most current information. And certainly the government is way behind.
Right. And
there we are.
Is that by design? Is the government behind because they have money invested in these animal products and these hospitals and these pesticides and herbicides and chemical companies? Dare we say that there might be some connection there?
Perhaps, but I also think the human condition, we kind of don't like change.
Right.
And when we learn something, especially in a prestigious university, we learn something that we believe to be true. And then later, people are discovering that it isn't true. It kind of shakes your foundation. And for people that have been pushing a certain belief to change is very difficult. So
right.
This is a complicated problem.
It's a complicated problem, but the reason we're talking about it in our introduction here to today's program is because we want people to know that on this program, you address all of these topics. If you're tuning in for the first time, you're in a good place. You're in a safe place. Welcome. And if you're tuning in again after listening over the years, thank you. We appreciate it. But what we're here to do today is to reintroduce you to the program and to let you know that we've got a lot more to say about this, and the things that keep us going here at Responsible Eating and Living are the fact that we have many of you write in and say that you listen and you like what you hear and you're trying to connect the dots, but sometimes you have difficulty doing it. And I want to say there's another topic of health that we haven't talked about yet that I am personally experienced with, and that is obesity. Before I became a vegan, I was over 100 pounds heavier. And because of just switching to a plant-based vegan lifestyle, I've dropped 100 pounds over the years. And so I feel your pain if you are dealing with weight and food is an issue with weight for you. If you are dealing with weight because of food, if you don't have another medical thing that is creating your weight problem, I can't help you with that. But if you are dealing with weight because you are having problems eating food that benefits you as opposed to just packs on you, I can help. And one of the ways I always tell folks is I went vegan and that's all I did. And I started to lose mass amounts of weight. And then I realized that nutritional excellence had to be a part of that too, to keep feeling good about it. But at first I felt fantastic as soon as I switched to a vegan lifestyle. And I got all of this energy back, and I felt just young again, if I may be so bold as to say that. I mean, I didn't even feel this good when I was young. And then I later connected the dots and found out that all of this food was affecting my health. The animal foods that I was eating, the cheese that is so delicious when you're eating it and so addicting, and the steaks and the chops and all of the things that we think are just so important to our daily life. We're calling those things protein now. You go to a restaurant and they say, oh, would you like protein with that? And as Caryn always says, every vegetable in your salad has enough protein to sustain you. You don't need to kill an animal for protein.
I want to add one more thing in this introduction, touching on absolutely everything that drives our activism and our motivation. And that is, it's really difficult for science to look at the big picture and present reports and present information that give us the direction in which to go in. Because with science, it's all about reductionism. Science often can only look at one or two or a few parameters. It can't look at the big picture. It's not good at doing studies and collecting a lot of data with controls where it can evaluate the effect of air, water, and soil on climate change and all the different kinds of food products we have and come to a concrete conclusion.
And you know a little about concrete because you have a master's in chemical engineering and you did
I did my thesis on cement.
So, I mean...
which is a major component in concrete.
But we digress.
We're digressing. But the point is, it's really difficult for science to look at all these different things, to look at highly processed food and salt and sugar and oil and genetically modified food and food grown with pesticides and herbicides and point their finger and say, yes, all of this is impacting our health. The resources that we have and the finances that we have, it's like impossible to look at all the parameters.
And speaking of impossible, there's a burger out called the Impossible Burger, which is also a science. It was made in the lab, right?
Yeah, it was.
And we've talked about that.
Highly processed food.
And so a lot of people are now switching to the Impossible Burger or the Beyond Burger because they don't want to eat beef. And on this program, is that enough? And we say, no, it's not enough to just switch from eating a hamburger that's made from a cow to an Impossible Burger. We still want you to be informed about what's going to happen to your health, and we're still on the subject of health, if you do eat the Impossible Burger, and if you do just eat the Beyond Burger. I mean, it's better for the cows.
And it's a transitional food.
And like now getting back to my obesity, when I was transitioning from a standard American diet, a SAD diet, to a vegan diet, I needed these foods. They helped me transition. So if you're in a transition process, if you're transitioning, yes, I would say go to these foods, but don't do it forever. It's not as healthy as making your own bean burgers with rice and mushrooms, which I'm not a big fan of, but I'm learning to love. A healthy, plant-based, nutritious lifestyle is eventually what we would like you to consider. And so making your own bean burgers and making your own lentil burgers and making your own grain burgers, as opposed to going out and buying the Beyond Burger or the Impossible Burger, is eventually where we'd like to see you go. To learn how to get back in your kitchen.
And we want everybody to get back into the kitchen. We were talking recently with someone who was horrified to see a demonstration where people were saying women belong in the kitchen. We're talking about everyone.
Everyone.
Right. All persons, young and old. Find your kitchen and learn about preparing healthy, delicious, whole, minimally processed plant food.
We have one more subject. We talked about the environment. We talked about health. Now we need to talk about the animals, because that's really why we're here. We've saved the best for last. And we don't like, as Caryn mentioned at the beginning, we don't like the idea that we need to grow animals and kill them and then slaughter them and give them to consumers. We want the animals to live out their own lives, and it's become a passion for Caryn over the years, and now it's my passion to save the animals.
And it's bigger than I ever realized, because obviously I see the animals that we're raising to feed people for food. The cows, the pigs, the sheep, the chickens, the ducks.
The fish.
The fish.
Let's talk about fish for a second. A lot of folks don't equate fish as an animal.
The scaly vegetable. We're learning so much about fish. I had Jonathan Balcombe on the program a while ago, and we're bringing him on again. He had a wonderful book about fish, and now he's got a new book out about flies and insects. These are two groups of living beings that we can't relate to. They're like aliens to us. We don't understand, and yet what are we learning? We're learning that fish feel, fish are sentient, fish are smart, fish can recognize each other. Some fish have careers and clients and families.
Hey, I've seen Finding Nemo.
Fish are friends, not food.
Yeah.
And what are we doing? We're destroying the ocean. We're destroying this world underwater that not only is home to so many different...
It's a universe.
It's a universe. It's home to so many different species, mammals and fish and plankton and life, and it provides so much oxygen.
Right.
And when the oceans die, we die.
Right.
We now have aquaculture. This is another horrific invention by humanity, where we're confining and growing fish in tanks and underwater, small areas.
Yeah, confined
they're
cages.
Living in their own filth. I mean, there are some that try and filter it out. And we're feeding more fish to them, so we're draining the ocean even more. It's not sustainable.
There's a great film out called Seaspiracy, which we've talked about on the program. And a shout out to the people at Sea Shepherd for helping put that together.
And I remember I was telling you this story recently. The reason why I stopped eating fish was decades ago when I went to Epcot Center at Disney World, and they were showing the food of the future. And there were these big white tanks where they were growing fish. Right. And I thought, if fish have to grow this way, not in a natural environment, not with their friends and family, not with the sea life all around them, I don't want to eat fish. And this was just the beginning of aquaculture. And now it's just a disaster. And it's bad for the fish. And the fish that they're growing is not healthy for us, but it's also leaching back into the environment and wreaking havoc on the environment. That's the sea world. That's the world of fish. And then there's the insect world, which is mind-blowing.
Right.
And we're going to dig deeper when we have Jonathan Balcom on the program. But what I just want to mention about insects, it's a whole nother planet. It's a whole nother world. There's beauty. There's violence. There's balance. And then humans come along and let's just throw toxic chemicals and just destroy everything.
And that's what we're good at.
That's what we're good at.
Is it worth it, is my question. I mean, should we just let nature take over and have the fires get out of control and have the floods get out of control and have the pandemics, which many say pandemics are caused by the way we grow animals to feed people?
Absolutely.
If you confine animals and they get sick and they spread their disease to one another, and then we eat those animals and we pick up that disease, it makes sense to me. But I have what some folks call common sense. Why do we turn the other way? Why do we not see this? Why do we want to?
So here we are, and we gave our introduction. I don't know how many reasons we gave in just 20, 30 minutes about why people need to consume plants and why we need to treat our planet more respectfully and why we need to bring it back in balance. But we put a lot of information out there. And now I want to talk a little bit about how people have difficulty processing this information.
Well, I sure did at first. I've known you for many years, and you have always been this way. You have been this way since I've met you back in the early 90s.
Yep.
You have always been the militant vegan in my world, and I didn't start listening to you until we reconnected in 2006. And I finally realized, after sitting there in all of my obese glory, that you might have something to all of this talk.
I really believe that people have the knowledge deep within them. I think we're coded with a lot of information. And I think you had it inside you because you had done this
theater piece,
eating disorder or eating dad order, and you had...
It was all about eating disorders, and it had a vegan diet versus a standard American diet. And I actually cooked vegan on stage 6 shows a week. And even earlier than that, I watched an animal being slaughtered on a farm. I hated the people that were responsible for killing the animal. They seemed like monsters to me. And I said to myself, at that time, I was very young, in 7th grade, I think. And I said, I'm never eating animals again. And I can't stand anyone who eats animals. And then when I went home with that information, the culture that I was being raised in sort of numbed me. It hypnotized me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really what I want to focus on now.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of us are walking around hypnotized by not only the dishes of our childhood, but also the information that we're being fed that this is okay and that we need protein and animals don't feel.
This topic of being hypnotized or being socialized or given demands by our culture. Number one, I want to go back to Jim Mason and the book he wrote, An Unnatural Order, that I spoke about a few weeks ago. And everyone's assignment still, if you haven't read it, is to read The Unnatural Order.
Or at the very least, listen to the archived program, which Caryn will link to in this program.
Absolutely. The problem started some 10,000 years ago, and this indoctrination that has, fast forward, come to where we are today is the basis for so many problems. We have been hypnotized to expect a certain kind of lifestyle. We've been hypnotized to want to have a variety of things. Big house, nice cars, romantic vacations.
Thick, juicy steaks.
Promotions, even though they come with more stress that affect our health. And
promotions in jobs, you mean?
Yeah, job promotions.
Yeah.
And being driven by something bigger and better and more important that's perceived as more important.
Being driven by square footage.
Feeding our ego, not feeding our emotional well-being and our health.
Right.
And lies. We've been built on a foundation of lies, of things that we've been told that are important to us, that we need, and these create expectations, and these expectations drive us. It's all false.
It's all false. It's crazy when you meet someone who is so far from your beliefs that you look at them, and I look at them now and say, okay, man, good on ya, do your thing, whatever floats your boat. You look at them, and how do you feel about them?
Well, obviously, we don't want to be judgmental, but we're all judging all the time. And we're all comparing everybody to ourselves, what we want to be, what we think they should be.
Oh, but is it judging, or is it feeling compassion for how in the dark they are about,
I appreciate
these things that you just...
I appreciate you reframing it from a positive point of view, because that's how I feel. That's where I feel like I'm coming from. I think what you are is
not a judgmental person at all. I think you are a very compassionate person.
I want people to be their best. I want people to find the best things that they can do in their life so that they can feel better and feel like they're contributing to society in a positive way, and find
could that be the motivation?
Meaning.
Is that the motivation that brings you back to this microphone every week? Because I've always asked you this question more than once, or not always asked you, but I've asked you this question more than once. What brings you back knowing that there are so many hypnotized people?
Absolutely. And today, what I wanted to talk about was this concept of lies creating expectations that drive us and give us food for thought. And the food for thought is the thoughts that are feeding your mind, the thoughts that are feeding who you are, who you want to be, or maybe don't want to be, and the thoughts that feed your stress and anxiety, and the thoughts that feed your gratitude. Because the thoughts are what drive us. The thoughts that the recordings that we hear, the positive things, the negative things, they drive us. And all of this has been built into who we are from thousands of years ago.
Terrific.
And I'm calling it a cafeteria of thoughts.
Okay, very nice.
And like in a cafeteria, we can choose the foods that we want. We could choose the thoughts. But it's not that obvious that we can choose these things. But we can choose these things. And education and being aware of things helps us make informed choices.
So it's more like a smorgasbord of thought.
It's a smorgasbord.
It's a Hofbrau.
So if you go to a cafeteria, or you go to a salad bar, or you go to a smorgasbord,
or you go to an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Or an all-you-can-eat, exactly. You can choose the salad and make a big, healthy, full of fiber, nutritious, lots of vegetables and fruit, big salad. Or you could choose from the hot chafing dishes of bacon and eggs and beef stroganoff. You can choose the foods that are going to give you positive energy, or you can choose the foods that are going to give you negative energy. And by negative energy, I mean stressing your body, bringing in toxins that you have to clear out and work very hard to do that.
And when your body breaks down and can't do that anymore, you have to have procedures that put you in the hospital and medication that you're on.
And it's the same thing with thoughts. So we have this cafeteria of thoughts.
So let's hear some of this.
We can choose the negative thoughts, or we can choose the thoughts that are driving us to do things that may not be the best for ourselves.
Right.
It's really hard.
How do we not look away? Because I know so many people who just look the other way. I don't want to know that animals get slaughtered. I just want to know that I can go to the grocery store and buy my whole fryers cut up, and so I can go home and fry my chicken.
Well, the first thing is breathing. And I love to use the line that you often say, you breathe for a living.
I do. I breathe for a living.
We all breathe for a living. And I like to use the breath, because the breath can recalibrate. The breath can change your starting point. If you're feeling all kinds of thoughts, or you're taking in
if you're overwhelmed with thoughts and anxiety about what it is that you should do, and what you should take the job promotion, or you should
build a new house, or add rooms to your house, or go on the next big vacation or whatever it is, or change your diet, and it's all overwhelming, the first thing to do is breathe.
Find a nice quiet spot and take some deep breaths.
And breathe so that you can come from a calmer place and you can respond to your thoughts. You can respond to the information coming in and not react. And I think this is the most challenging thing that humans can do. Respond or react.
And a lot of people will argue with you that responding and reacting are similar. They're the same thing.
Yes, and they're not. And I want to clarify this because it's important and it's definitely food for thought. So when we're responding to something, we are replying. It's an answer, replying positively or favorably.
So a response is not necessarily a reaction in your estimation.
No, because reacting can happen quickly. And when we're under the influence of something, a stimulus or some kind of action that we're in opposition to, it's like a knee-jerk thing that happens. Something happens and we just react. But responding is taking that breath in, evaluating the situation, and then kind of like when you're playing chess, you think a bunch of steps ahead and seeing what the actions are going to be by what you're going to say.
So an intelligent response.
An intelligent response.
And the way to get an intelligent response, in your opinion, is to stop and breathe before...
It's the very first thing, breathing. Now,
so if I'm going to hear something negative that's going to frighten me, let's say.
And it doesn't always have to be negative. It can just be something that you don't understand.
Right. If I hear something that I don't understand and
frightens you.
And it frightens me, the thing you say to do is
breathe.
To stop and breathe.
Absolutely. Breathe.
How many breaths do you take before you think about it and then give a
It definitely depends
response?
On the individual. Someone who's used to meditating and knows how to get to this place of calm quickly, it won't take as long as someone who's not as experienced.
So let's use an example as a reaction versus a response. So you're a 12-year-old Caryn Hartglass. You go home and tell your mother, I'm going to be a vegetarian. Does your mother stop, breathe, think about her response, and then give it to you? Or does your mother just immediately react?
She immediately reacts, and she reacts out of fear. The fear of, I want the best thing for my child, and I'm afraid that what she's choosing to do is going to be detrimental to her health.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so it can come from a place of love, but it may not be the best response.
Well, it comes from a place of love, and it comes from a place of fear all at the same time. Right? I'm afraid my child is not going to grow if she becomes a vegetarian.
But the better response would be engaging with the child, finding out
more about the subject that the child is interested in.
And what motivated the child, what the reasons were, and then have an intelligent conversation. And then maybe both together can do some research and find the best compromise or the best strategy.
Yeah. Because I know a lot of kids out there are probably getting that same reaction from their parents when they realize, like I did when I was very young, and I went home to my parents, and my parents reacted instead of responded. They said, oh no, everybody eats meat and animals don't feel pain, and whatever it was that they said. Now, this is a hypothetical situation, but if I was to say something like this as a child and then see that my parents were stopping to think about it, to breathe first, and then to say to me, let me get back to you on that, I might have been okay with that, right?
Yeah.
Saying, let me get back to you about that and finding out a little more information is a good thing. You don't have to have an immediate response or reaction. I get it. Okay, well, that's great.
Now, I know a lot of people are hearing information and they know they should eat better. They know they should include more plant foods in their diet. They know they should include more fiber. Yeah, you hear that all the time, don't you? I hear it all the time.
When you have conversation with people, the one thing, like we've gone out to dinner with friends before in the past and in the present, and they're not vegan. They're not even vegetarian, but they're always feeling like they need to let us know that they have been trying to do this, but they can't for a number of reasons. What are some of the reasons we've had in the past?
Yeah, I know a number of people who have started, and some start for a few days and give up, and some start for a few months and can't continue. Sometimes they're in a family and members of the family aren't in line with what they're doing, and that adds challenge. And then some people have very busy lives and other stresses in their life, and they end up just reaching for what's convenient.
Or cravings. They have cravings.
There are cravings, and they just go for the cravings. For me, what always was my anchor was not wanting to support pain and suffering for animals, not wanting to support destruction of the environment, and not wanting to compromise my health. And that's where I come from. I want to help these people find more motivation and more strength from understanding the bigger picture.
The problem that I have is when I talk to people and all of a sudden they say, that all life is precious, and they're talking only about human life, and all life is precious. And yet when I bring up the question, well, what about that hamburger you're eating? And they don't have an answer. How do you deal with that?
Well, it's challenging. So if someone's religious, there are many different organizations today that are connecting the dots with a particular religion and veganism and eating plant food. And the books and the doctrines that come from different religions have all been interpreted over decades, interpreted or misinterpreted, depending on your point of view. But there's a lot of evidence that shows that most of these religions started with a vegan foundation.
Right.
With a do no harm to all foundation.
Do no harm. That's really important.
And we got off track. One of my favorite historians, vegetarian historians, was Rynn Berry. And he wrote profusely on this subject and has a number of books where he shows examples in the different religions how they started being plant-based and then got off the track and kind of made up excuses to enable meat eating.
That's really cool that you bring up Rynn, because he was obviously one of your friends, but also one of the pioneers of this movement, just like you.
Absolutely. I had Rynn on numerous times before. Unfortunately, he passed.
He passed away several years ago, correct?
Yeah. There are numerous different approaches. There are wonderful films that people can watch. One thing I'm really encouraged about right now is the children and teens that are getting educated and are specifically concerned about the planet because they know that the planet is where they live and they're concerned about their future. Right. And the environment is changing rapidly and negatively for sustaining human life. So more teens and children are concerned about this, and children are educating their parents, and more of them are interested in this plant diet.
Yes.
And parents are being forced in some ways to learn from their children.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because the children are leading.
The parents are actually being forced to learn.
Well, the good parents are the ones that are open and are willing to support their children, like we just spoke about earlier, to breathe and listen and learn.
Not react, but respond intelligently.
And I think more parents are like that today.
An informed response, I guess, is what
absolutely and
is important.
And they can learn together. So that's something that really encourages me.
Learning together, right? Yes. I've talked to children about their vegetarianism, about their veganism, and asked them, are your parents on board with this? And they have said, slowly they're coming around to it, but I'm usually just on my own when it comes to preparing my meals and not wanting to eat flesh.
But there continues to be this strong motivation in many people from the lies that created expectations that feel this need to consume animal food. And it is very powerful because it has been driven into our DNA over thousands and thousands of years. And this was really difficult for many people to break away from. How do we do it? There's only, you present the information, you present the information, you present the information.
Right. And what keeps you coming back to it is always my question, because I talk to so many people who react instead of give an informed and intelligent response to my question when they've asked me a question, and that is, why are you a vegan? And my question is always, why are you not?
Why are you not? The word vegan today in 2021 has power.
Yeah.
It didn't some 20, 30 years ago. Nobody even knew what the word was. But today, vegan gets a reaction.
Yes.
Not necessarily a thoughtful response where you hear the word and you breathe and you take it in and you think about it.
Right.
It
frightens a lot of people.
A reaction. And it's a trigger because I really believe internally we have the knowledge and it triggers something that we're confused about and afraid about because it takes courage to change.
It takes courage to change, and it takes a desire to want to change. I think the desire has to come first, that you want to change, that you want to make the change. I don't think a lot of people want to make the change. I think they're perfectly happy with the way they are, and so they're going to continue. And they don't want to think about the pain and suffering that drives you. It's not that they want to cause pain and suffering. It's just that they don't want to think about the pain and suffering that they are causing.
I'm going to disagree a little bit. I don't think people are happy with the situation they're in.
Okay.
I don't think they're happy because the research shows, the science shows, depression is up. People are more depressed than ever. There are more suicides than ever before. And I believe that a lot of the depression, a lot of the unhappiness comes from an imbalance in the body from eating the wrong food. We're all chem labs. And there's chemical imbalances in the body that we have brought on ourselves from the food that we eat, from the toxic food that we eat, from the highly processed food, from the animal products, also from the chemicals that are in the flesh that we eat, that the animals generated when they were being slaughtered, when they were being abused. We take all of that in and we can feel it. And this adds to depression.
Great thought.
These imbalances that we're creating within ourselves. And the world is a scary place, but we are magnifying it. We are increasing it by bringing greater imbalance within our bodies. And it's making our brains more difficult to manage. It's difficult for a brain to work when all the chemicals aren't in balance.
All right, so speaking of food that people are eating, we've eaten some pretty good food in the last few days. Let's talk about this food that we've eaten. This good vegan food that we've been eating that only fed not only our body with nourishment and has gone to great use, but also fed our minds.
I like to wrap up the program talking about delicious food that is vegan, kind to the planet, for the most part healthy, or at least healthier than what the standard American or the standard human may be eating.
The standard human diet.
The standard human diet. What's the acronym? That doesn't work.
Should.
Should.
Should. It sounds like shit. The standard human diet.
Really isn't a standard human diet because people eat so differently around the world. I love talking about food. And this week, we visited a number of restaurants that we've visited before. The first one I want to talk about is Baia. Now, I was there before, a few weeks ago, and you joined me a few days ago.
So Baia is a restaurant in San Francisco right near the Opera House. It's actually right across the street from the Opera House and Louise M. Davies Symphony Hall. It's that wonderful corner building, for those of you who know San Francisco. It's brick. And it's really cool. And
it's a gorgeous space. Yeah,
it's a great space. And it's a vegan Italian restaurant owned and operated by Matthew Kenny.
Yes, it's a Matthew Kenny brand. And as we mentioned a few weeks ago, Matthew Kenny has restaurants all over the planet.
Right.
Which is very exciting.
He's doing some amazing things. And this is all Italian. Was wonderful. I can't wait to go back.
Yeah, so they make a lot of their own plant-based cheeses, and then some of them they use from products that are available today.
Yeah, here was one of the things I thought I would never be able to eat again once I went vegan, and I had it the other day at Baia. It's cacio e pepe. It was a creamy sauce with a peppery flavor, and it was served with a beautiful pasta. It was so stinky and parmesan-y, I was like afraid that I was being fed something that wasn't vegan, but it was vegan and it was delicious.
I went in a healthy direction. I got the arugula salad, which I love arugula.
You're so good.
And it had beets in it, but it came with a little plant ricotta, similar to the kind that we make at home. And I highly recommend that recipe. Our almond ricotta is amazing and pretty easy to make. I also got the side, which was polenta, and it was a creamy polenta.
It was beautiful.
And really, really lovely.
And the people we were with...
They were not vegan.
Beautiful pizza.
Beautiful.
One pizza was covered with
It was enormous.
It had arugula on it and avocado, and it was just this incredible looking pizza.
Yeah, we have to go back and get that.
And the other person had what you had.
Yeah, the arugula and the pesto.
Yeah, but my cacio e pepe was delicious, and the pasta was like a rigatoni. It was thick, al dente. It was just delicious. And I had a Bloody Mary. And they don't call them Bloody Marys. They call them Baia Mary.
Baia Marys.
Baia means bay in Italian. And please check it out. It was delicious.
So just like other cuisines, we can veganize every cuisine. You can have the familiar foods that you love, and they can be delicious. And in these restaurants, they're finally figuring that out.
Yeah, and the place was packed. Okay, so we also went to Garden Fresh.
Okay,
again.
Now Garden Fresh is kind of our...
This is the opposite of Baia.
Garden Fresh is one of these...
This is a place you go when you just want to get food, get it fast, and get it in your body.
This is vegan Chinese food.
Right.
They've been around for a long time. And there are 2 locations here where we're staying in Palo Alto. I will confess, there is that element of oil, salt, and sugar.
Sometimes you just gotta have it.
And this is our...
This is what we call our cravings.
This is our craving.
This is
our
when
comfort
vegans
food.
feel guilty. It's when they go to a vegan restaurant that uses a little oil, a little salt, and a little sugar. But, in Garden Fresh's defense, it is not salty at all. Their food is not salty.
They do a really good job.
And it is really not that oily.
No. And what I like about it is I'm eating a lot of food because in Asian food, specifically, they use a lot of cruciferous vegetables, a lot of cabbage, a lot of onions, a lot of garlic, a lot of mushrooms, and these are all really nutritious foods. So I'm kind of hooked on the vegetable chow fun, which has bean sprouts and cabbage and
those wonderful big wide noodles.
Those rice noodles. And you're into this curry tofu dish.
Right, it's tofu with potatoes and carrots and bell pepper in a curry sauce. It was very good.
Now, normally when we're back east, when we get this craving for this kind of food, we always order a big platter of greens. And we haven't found a restaurant around here that does the greens quite as well as we know back home.
Yeah, Garden Fresh is great. If you're in the area, check it out. It's awesome.
And then the other restaurant we visited again is True Food Kitchen. This is a chain that was founded or co-founded by Dr. Andrew Weil. And it's a great restaurant to bring everyone to because there's something for everyone. There's a lot of organic. They have great vegan options. You can get a green juice.
Yes, and you can get a cocktail if you want. And as Caryn said, it's a great place to bring people who...
For different people who are on the food continuum in different places.
Right. We were talking earlier on the program about Beyond Burger and Impossible Burger, which a lot of restaurants are offering now. But the one thing I really love about True Food Kitchen is they make their own burger, and it's delicious. It's a bean burger, and believe it or not, it has mushrooms. And the reason I say that is because I don't usually eat mushrooms, but this burger I look forward to eating, and I think I get my mushroom intake with it. So, and mushrooms are really good for you, and you need to do it. And so I usually either do a supplement or go to True Food Kitchen and get one of their burgers.
I want to just shout out to all the restaurants that make their own vegan burgers and don't rely on these new trendy Beyond and Impossible burgers.
Yeah, big shout out to them. This burger is delicious, and it's actually on the menu called the Vegan Double Cheeseburger. And they don't serve it with French fries. They serve it with a baked... You can either get it with a salad or with a baked sweet potato. They call it a baked sweet potato hash, but it's just cubes of sweet potatoes that they've baked in the oven.
I had the Korean bowl, and I saw someone else eating
it
the last time, and I was craving it.
So what was in that?
It had bean sprouts and...
Glass noodles?
Glass noodles.
Were those glass noodles?
Yeah, those are glass noodles. So glass noodles are made from mung bean, and they are clear. That's why they're called glass noodles. But it had a really tasty sauce, and it was really satisfying. And it's funny because at this restaurant and many other restaurants, and I'm not knocking the servers, they just do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah,
they give you an option to add protein. So you order the bowl and they say, would you like to add a protein? And the protein can either be like chicken or fish or tofu even.
Well, they're calling it protein now.
They're driving me crazy because number one, the bowl itself, which is made of all kinds of wonderful fresh vegetables. All vegetables, everybody. All plant foods contain complete protein, okay?
That's one thing you will learn on this program time and time again.
Let's kill that myth. All plant foods contain complete protein.
All plant foods contain complete protein.
So my bowl was filled with all the essential amino acids I need to create protein within my body.
And that word protein could be one of the triggers of this hypnosis that people put us
Exactly.
into.
We're so focused on the macronutrient protein. And we need 3 macronutrients. Protein, carbohydrate, and fat. We need them all. We need them from healthy, whole food sources.
Not necessarily animals.
Exactly. We need these macronutrients, and people are really confused about it. And the government helps us be confused because they have the My Plate, which shows the different foods we should be eating, fruits and vegetables and grains, and then protein.
Right. Which is...
So either we're going to talk about the kinds of food we can eat, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, raw nuts, and seeds, or we can talk about macronutrients. But combining them doesn't make sense. And adding a protein to food in restaurants doesn't make sense. And it's unfortunate because this adds to the lies and expectations that we talked about earlier. So people will see food on the menu and they'll be thinking, but I need protein. I need to add protein to that. So if people are ordering a salad, they want to have their grilled chicken on top because they think they need to have that protein. And this is one of the lies that we have been indoctrinated with over decades and
conditioning
decades and
too. It's conditioning. You will have to have that Caesar salad with chicken. So now there's a lot of companies that are going into the lab and they're making things that resemble chicken but aren't necessarily. They're made from. I don't even think they're made from plants.
I just want to say the salad that people will eat, and there are many different wonderful kinds of salads you can have. The dark leafy green vegetables are filled with protein, carbohydrate, and even fat. And all the plant foods that you can add into a salad, the beans, the grains, the onions, the raw nuts and seeds. You can even add fruit to salad. All of those ingredients contain the essential nutrients we need. And we don't have to add a protein to it. We don't have to add a grilled chicken. We don't have to add a grilled gardine, even a plant-based meat-like substance.
But people want that.
They think they need it.
They think they need it, and they're conditioned to want it. I know, speaking from personal experience, I thought I needed to have something on top of the salad, and that takes time to transition off of that thought. Now I'll just add more vegetables.
I hope we've given you
some food for
thought today, and think about your own thoughts and how they feed your mind. Are you thinking of good thoughts? Are you thinking of bad thoughts? Are you thinking of nourishing thoughts? Are you thinking of toxic thoughts? Or do you have toxic thoughts? Things to think about. Remember, we're at responsibleeatingandliving.com. Send us an email at info@realmeals.org. If you've enjoyed this program and other programs, please share them on your social media platforms. Rate us on whatever podcast app you're listening to.
And thank you.
Thank you,
PRN. Thank you, Caryn.
Thank you, Gary.
Have a delicious week.